So here's a statement that in all of my time on the internet, I never thought I would say. Let's talk about Justin Bieber. I know Justin Bieber is one of the weirdest and most inconsistent musicians that I've ever witnessed. I thought Love Yourself was a pretty good single, and I had Yummy on my top 10 worst songs of the year like everybody else in the universe. I enjoyed Purpose as a coherent album that had a bunch of really good songs on it, while Justice and Changes sound like kids in middle school trying to make modern R&B. And that's actually what Bieber has been aiming for, as he threw a fit when he wasn't nominated for Best R&B Album at the 2021 Grammys, when in all reality, he should have been honored that the piece of trash called Changes got nominated for anything whatsoever. In his quest to be seen as a more serious and adult artist, Bieber has managed to do anything but, while showing his serious lack of maturity to the entire world. But what if I told you that there was an album he released in 2013 that absolutely nobody ever mentions, and it involves Bieber actually putting out one of the better R&B displays that year? I wouldn't believe it myself, but alas, it's true. During his Bad Boy stage, when everyone still hated him, Bieber started releasing a single every week in a countdown to the theatrical release of his film Believe. This release schedule was aptly titled Music Mondays, to which I asked Bieber's marketing team, really? Couldn't think of anything better? Anyways, this happened for 10 straight weeks from October 7th, 2013 to December 9th, 2013. And surprisingly, I have to assume because of the bad press he was getting and one other factor that we'll discuss later, they were significantly less popular than most songs Bieber had put out previously. The highest charting song was Heartbreaker, the first song released, which charted at 13 on the Hot 100, while most of the singles struggled to get above 50. This could also be due to oversaturating the market being a bad idea at the time, since nowadays we have whole entire albums that chart. But for one of the biggest pop stars in the world, this was extremely unprecedented. When the last single released on December 9th, Bieber announced all of the singles would be put on an album titled Journals, which was released on December 23rd. And with that, the shock continued as, due to the first week sales not being tracked and submitted, the album didn't chart in America. And that seemed to signal to him that the change in direction was not what the population wanted, since he didn't release a single song until the EDM banger Where Are You Now by the electric duo Skrillex and Diplo, or they're better known as Jack U, which was a sorely underappreciated duo that I miss a lot. That being said, what change in direction was I talking about? Well, Journals was an R&B album and a step in a very clear direction for Bieber to focus on more adult-sounding music, as Belief sounded just as neutered as his My World 2.0 album. Now, knowing what you know now about the history of Bieber's R&B path from the two most recent releases he's had, I wouldn't blame you for thinking that a teenage R&B album from him would be unlistenable. Yet somehow, I'm here to tell you, plot twist, Journals is, in my opinion, the second best album he's released. And yes, I'm counting it as an official album, even though it's listed as a compilation because his record label wouldn't give it an official release due to the fact that they were unhappy with said direction he was going. And although I don't really know why they would be upset with it other than the numbers that it put up, because this is some of his best material in every manner possible. While his prowess on his new project sounds like the pastor's kid who has all of the smoothness of a bull in a china shop, there's a certain authenticity that Journals has in its soul. Justin doesn't force himself to try and sound suave, but instead he has this frantic sense of sincerity and desperation that can only come from being heartbroken early on in one's life. On the track Memphis, the chorus are these 4 lines. I'd like to give you what you need. I try, but you're making it hard for me. How do I make you believe that I love you, need you here to stay? That's so raw and unfiltered, and a feeling that I'm sure everyone in the world who's been in a relationship has felt at one point or another. I sure know I have. This album is filled with gems like that, universal lines that exemplify youthful love in all stages, from its infancy to its death. It's such an interesting sound in a world of crooners who could get you into bed with one note in their falsetto. To hear someone embrace their own lens of naivety and vulnerability to sex and romance. And there's an open sense of optimism that can only come from someone infatuated with their first love. It also doesn't hurt that Bieber actually sounds really great here. It could be because of the comfort he took in being that open and authentic, or it could be because this is the first album where his voice seems to have stopped dropping and he's finally settling into his organic range. But his voice sounds as angelic and pleasant to listen to as someone like a Jay Holiday or a Pleasure P. Sure, he still didn't have the control over his voice that they did, but when he does try and hit those high notes in the range he was used to singing in, it just adds to that sense of youthful naivety even more. To bolster this comparison, I think one of the best songs that Bieber has put out in recent memory is the joint single with the Kid Laroi, appropriately titled Stay, because it really leans into that manic desperation and he thrives in it. His titular pleas sound legitimate, and now that he has 100% control of his voice, he mimics the manic nature of the lyrics in his vocals. Anyways, back to Journals. Another thing that I think makes the album on a different level than the rest of his catalog are the instrumentals. The key for a good R&B album is to have more low-key beats and instrumentation in order to highlight the singer's voice. The problem is that modern Bieber projects such as Changes and Justice seem to have misinterpreted that mantra and switched it into the beats being monotonous and repetitive slogs, which they seem to have confused as simplistic. When it comes to Changes, Jesus Christ, every single beat sounds the exact same. They're all boring and uninspired trap beats which are littered with hi-hats and have almost the same BPM every single time. And although there is some more variation on Justice, mainly due to Jon Bellion, who I've already made a video on this channel, being on the production credits, there still isn't that much disparity between songs to set the tone of each apart. Meanwhile, on Journals, the beats help set the distinct atmosphere for each song. On the track Bad Day, they managed to flip a sample of one of the most beautiful slow jams of all time, Footsteps in the Dark Parts 1 and 2 by the Isley Brothers, into a more melancholic song that still carries the same solemn aura in its lyrics. There are beats that are synth-based, there are beats that are guitar-based, there is a straight-up piano ballad in Change Me. The reason for this eclectic mixture is because the production team on Journals was pretty great, with names such as T-, Chef Tone, The Audibles, and Major Ali being behind a lot of the tracks, which they all have production credits on a lot of very prominent R&B artists' discographies. Also, Diplo was the main producer on the last track of the album, Memphis with Big Sean, and it's one of the cleanest beats that I've ever heard from him, so maybe he should try out R&B instead of working with Lil Xan a lot. Just a thought. Speaking of Big Sean, although they are sparse here, Journals has some pretty great features. Aside from one that I won't mention because he's trash, and if you really need to know, you can look it up yourself. You have prime Lil Wayne on a track called Backpack, which is a song that I haven't mentioned for a reason. It's a storytelling track where Bieber is a human on Earth who finds an alien that crashed on Earth. And that alien is Lil Wayne, who uses Lil Wayne as a disguise, but hides in Bieber's backpack in his true form of an alien, and Bieber wants him to stay in his backpack. It's like E.T., but Lil Wayne is E.T., and Justin Bieber is Elliot. And the weirdest part about this whole thing is that it actually works. The song is pretty good, and it has a wicked guitar solo in the last third that perfectly meshes with the vibe of the first two. And Lil Wayne was always meant to rap as an alien. You go listen to it, come back, and attempt to tell me otherwise. The album also has a classic melodic Future feature on What's Hatnin', on his meteoric rise towards DS2, plus, as I previously mentioned, a good Big Sean feature, who was on a really solid string of features at the time. The most important feature, however, was a rapper who was beloved by everyone at the time on the heels of one of the most acclaimed mixtapes ever, Chance the Rapper. He featured on the song Confident, which was his introduction to mainstream audiences, as it was the first song he was a part of that charted on the Hot 100. More importantly than the exposure, it's a classic Chance verse. So it's a classic verse that adds to one of the best tracks on the album. And although the features are a big part of why the album works, the main reason was Justin Bieber himself. He wrote all these songs on tour in 2013, and you can tell he wanted to move in a more serious direction and that the movement was completely natural. It's a shame that his label seemingly shut him down until he started releasing the songs leading up to Purpose. While those songs still do show a sense of musical maturity, they are strictly pop songs that are radio friendly, just like a cash cow should put out. And now that his label has let him return to the path of R&B, probably because they view him as being the appropriate age for it, he is diving into a pool with a landing that is much less smooth than his original dive. Who knows whether Justin would have become an amazing R&B singer if he was allowed to continue down that path? That's a question that will never be answered. At least we can be satisfied that we have something of a relic that reminds us of what could have been. And what could have been is really, really great. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, you can like, comment, and subscribe. Any combination of the three will do. I would like to give a thank you to my patrons, Weston Katecki and Carl McGee, and my producer, the BC Film Reviews. If you would like to support this channel, since most videos are demonetized, and get some awesome perks along with it, my Patreon is in the description, as well as my Twitter, where you can reach out and we can connect. Thank you once again so much for watching, and I can't wait to see you in the next one. Goodbye.